Good day, grade fives. It's great to be here with you all again today. For today's lesson, I hope you were able to listen to the listening activity and take a guess at what genre that is. The genre that I placed it at, which is the actual genre it's known for, is called pop rock or punk rock. Yeah, depending on who you're talking to, they'll use one word over the other. Usually a punk rock is a better description of it. And there's lots of artists from the early 2000s who were in that punk rock stage. So if you want to look up more, you can always Google punk rock groups and see what kind of music there is. Today we're going to learn a song at the end that we can use for warm-ups in our future classes. But before that, we're going to talk to you about how we can identify different singers. So last week we looked at how, at a little quiz, that had you identify different voice types. So I wanted to give that to you a little bit cold in terms of just we haven't done a lot of that in class, and see how you guys did based off what we've talked about so far. And so some good strategies when you're trying to figure out what kind of voice type of singer, or if it's a higher voice or a lower voice, is kind of listen to the quality, and sometimes just trying to sing along as well gives you a good idea of what's going on. Because if you know where your voice is, then you have a better idea of what the other voices are doing. So first off, if it's a soprano or mezzo soprano, which are two voices that are very hard to tell apart, so if you mix up those two, that's always okay. It's until you get to the very highest range, like if you have someone singing a C8, they're probably not a mezzo soprano. But some of the middle range notes of a soprano and mezzo soprano are going to be very similar. So if you can't quite tell the difference between the two, then that's okay. So if you're listening to a voice, and let's say it's a woman's voice, because some of these voice types are commonly women. Sometimes they're not, but usually a majority of the time it is a woman's voice that is in this range. Listen for whether it's sounding like it's really strained when it's high, or if it sounds like it's still full when it's high. So when Mr. Mars sings high, I sound very strained and it's tight. When a soprano or a mezzo soprano sings higher notes, they'll sound more open. But if an alto tries to sing those same high notes, so if you hear them getting to the higher part of the range, or the higher notes, they might sound a little tighter. And so you have to think about, is this a really high note? And if it's a really, really high note, maybe it's a soprano or mezzo soprano. And if they're sounding a little strained as they get higher, but they sound really good in those kind of lower or middle range notes, then that might be an alto. And then commonly male voices are tenor, baritone, or bass. Not always, but they can be. And so sometimes you'll have women in those voice ranges, and sometimes you'll have men in the higher ranges. But majority of the time, a man is a tenor, a baritone, or a bass. So if you're listening for male voices, if it's a little higher and it's sounding really open, similar to a soprano, it's sounding like a higher male voice, and it's way up high and it's not sounding strained like Mr. Mars was when he was describing earlier, then they're probably a tenor, and just because they have a better control over that head voice. If they sound a little bit strained in that higher range, then they're probably a baritone, just because their range is more kind of in that middle to lower range. Their comfortable range is more in that middle to low range. And then if you don't hear them singing a lot of those higher notes, but just kind of staying low or middle low, then that's most likely a bass singer. Now, you'll have professional singers who have really wide ranges, and they'll throw you off because they'll fit into lots of different categories. But overall, if you can use these kind of tips as a general idea of how you can identify the different singers. So what I want you to do when you're at home is listen to some different music and try to see if you can figure out different singers' voice types based off of just what you're hearing. And then if you can take a guess, look up what it is online, and see how close you were. And this is really just a practice thing. The more you practice it, the better you'll be at identifying it. It's like when you listen to different instruments, and you can identify them a bit better. So if you're listening to a lot of orchestras, you'll be able to tell the difference between a cello and a viola, or a trumpet and a trombone, or a trombone and a tuba, a clarinet and an oboe, anything like that. So like anything else, practice makes perfect. And so if you want to give that a try, I strongly suggest it'd be a good idea to help get better at that skill in the future. Now, today we're going to finish off with a little bit of a singing for a song that we'll use as a warm-up in our next class when we go over a fun song that I like to do. So today's song is called Sing the Scale. Now it's a bit of a warm-up song, and when we come back in person, we can do it as a round as well, and I'll talk more about that when we are hopefully back in person together. So just listen first, and this is how the song goes. Just gonna have to make sure I get my first note correctly. We can sing the scale in sol, fa, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And that's all it is. And we can repeat that a bunch of times when we're doing the rounds, but that's all it is. So echo after me, please. We can sing the scale in sol, fa, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Good. Now I'm going to try bigger chunks and see if you can sing along with those large chunks. Now remember, the lyrics are always in the slides that I post. So let's try that one more time with the larger chunks. So echo after me, please. We can sing the scale in sol, fa, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Very good. So we can try singing that together now, and we'll go nice and slowly so that we can make sure we're matching notes as best as possible. So this is when we have to use our ears strongly. So sitting up straight, with your shoulders down and back, take some big breaths. Make sure you're breathing down into this area so that this gets expanded and you can support. Okay, ready? 1, 2, here we go. We can sing the scale in sol, fa, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Mr. Marr saying one note wrong there, but as long as we keep going, that's the big thing. So next class, we'll use that as a bit of a warm-up for our new song that we're going to try, and I'm excited to introduce that one next time. So there's a bit of a body percussion video that you can do after this. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye, everyone.